have everybody give Jane, who is his other half, his soulmate, and someone who does so much with him. Just acknowledge her. She's amazing. And without further ado, here's the real one who's going to speak. Oh, and I'm sorry, one more person. And I'd like everybody to acknowledge Itika Milanis, because she did the media read on our book and is helping Bryan in a lot of other ways with videos and media.
Hello, everybody. I might be too loud for this. Is that too loud? Oh, they like it. They're all going deaf. Don't worry. I would like to personally thank Misty and Jim for this incredible venue. How beautiful is that? And as soon as there's room, we're moving in. Check it out. It's going to be our second home, don't worry. No, this is a beautiful setting. Thank you very much. And had no idea that a murder in a hospital in February 2020 of Jane's dad would have ever ended up with me being somewhat of a, I don't know, an inspiration to others or providing hope to anybody around the world at all. I literally felt like those first 3 months after he was killed in that hospital and I was kicked out with security and threatened by all the medical professionals there, I didn't know where I was going to end up. I really, truly thought, if anything, I'd end up in prison for murdering one of those individuals who lied to my wife and her family, kicked me out, and then lied to all of them that he was dying of pneumonia. Let's put him on palliative care just 48 hours after they kicked me out, and that is overdosing him on morphine for the next 4.5 hours until it paralyzes his diaphragm from contracting, his heart from being able to beat, and we're going to just tell you that it reduces their pain and suffering while they take their last breath. If I gave you enough arsenic, eventually you're going to take your last breath too. That's what poisons do. So out of that horrific tragedy and my emotional upset and feeling lost and tormented spiritually, I just have to say it's been an incredible oxymoron, basically. From that was birthed millions of people around the world telling me that I was instrumental in saving their lives or the lives of their loved ones, and having celebrities walk up to me just randomly at places telling me that I saved their father's life, their mother's life. You're the remdesivir guy, right? I've heard that everywhere around the world. You're the remdesivir guy, right? You have saved millions of people's lives around the world. Oh my God, thank God. But it was only because I couldn't save one guy that was dear to me and to Jane. So it has been a really quite the dichotomy to experience what I suffered then emotionally, and then what has come as a result in the wake of that tragedy. So everything is in the honor of Weldon Frederick's memory, which is her dad, and thank you, Jane, for putting up with me rehashing that story to millions of people around the world for the last 4 years. It is really the only driving force behind everything I've ever done. Every time I've turned on the camera, said yes to an interview, went to a speaking engagement, went to a medical conference, wrote a book finally after COVID-19 was dismissed. I was asked by many, many people to write a book during COVID, and I thought that was ridiculous. Why would I write a book right now and take 3 to 6 months while they're pummeling you guys with all new research studies every day generated by AI most likely to convince you of a narrative they wanted you to fall for? I was not going to step away for months while they lied to you with 1,000 new research studies every single day. How could they possibly create 1,000 new research studies about COVID-19 in labs around the world and then publish them every single day during COVID while we're all locked down? They were actually putting on PubMed.gov a brand new list of over 1,000 studies a day during COVID-19 while we're all supposedly locked away at home. Can you explain to me how they did that? There was no way I was stepping away for months. I had to make sure you guys knew the truth. You want to know how to know what's true and what's false, just in case you're ever wondering in the future? Truth, 100% of the time, is easy to understand. How many of you found crap discussed about COVID that was confusing to you, mysterious and complex?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
There's a reason for that. That means it's fraudulent, it is a fraud, it is a deceit. Truth, 100% of the time, is easy to understand, and every philosopher of every generation has made that same statement. So if you don't understand what they're saying in the media, if it doesn't make sense to you, there's a reason. It is deceit, and deceitful with an intent. All right, so that is not why I'm here, is to explain that to you. Thank you all for coming here. Thank you for setting this up. Lindy, thank you for your support. Itika, thank you for keeping me legal. in the book. I wanted to charge all kinds of people with claims. And make sure your names were called out, your organizations were named publicly. She made sure I wasn't sued, so I could have this event here. Otherwise, we would do this from prison. Yeah, so thank you. This is much better than prison.
And we'd be there for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I hope y'all will show up if I ever get incarcerated somewhere for telling the truth. That'd be ridiculous. All right, so we are here for one main reason. The real reason for the book was not, I didn't write this book and publish it in August of this year, 2024, a year after they dismissed COVID as a national emergency last year in 2023. I didn't write it because I thought everybody wanted to read a book summarizing COVID-19. I was sick and tired of COVID-19 after 4 years, 24/7. Were you?
Yeah.
So who in the world would think they'd get excited about writing another book about COVID-19? So I think I should just tell you why I wrote it. There was only one reason. In 2024, in the first 6 months of that year, last year, our United States government, you'll see the document in the pages of the book, they published a document titled Long-Term Health Effects of COVID. And they gave it a new term in italics, in parentheses, called long COVID. So you've heard of long haulers COVID, you heard that referenced. It's now officially long-COVID. Now for all of you, you may not have read this document. Raise your hand if you've perused the several hundred pages of that document. Yep. I summarized it for you, just a few pages in the book. In that document, the United States government now has published, after surveying scientists and medical professionals around the world for the last 4 years, they now have a summarized 200 symptoms you will struggle with for weeks, months, years, even decades that they now call long COVID, that is a reaction solely to what they call a mild case of COVID. So throw out some examples of what were symptoms of COVID. Go ahead.
No taste and smell.
No taste and smell. What else?
Shortness of breath.
Shortness of breath. What else? Fever. Good. What else?
Brain fog.
Brain fog. What else?
Body ache.
Tiredness.
Body ache.
Tiredness. Body aches. Good. What else?
Fatigue.
Headaches. Good. Sore throat. Good. Cough. Yeah. What about hypoxia? Lowered oxygen levels.
Yeah.
How many of you owned a pulse oximeter for the first time in your life in the last 4 years? All of a sudden, everybody's losing their oxygen levels. I find that ironic, and now we all own a device you can stick on your finger to watch your oxygen level go down or stay normal. That was all symptoms of what they called COVID-19. Now, after having those symptoms for either 24, 48, 72 hours, people within 2 weeks will start developing similar symptoms that will continue to worsen or stay the same level, but never diminish. They call those 200 symptoms and now some medical disease diagnoses as long COVID. And they're now billable by your medical doctor and psychiatrist to your insurance companies for payment. 200 of them. And in the book, I summarized this for you. So here's a list of some of the things most commonly listed as long COVID symptoms that you should expect are on the list. Did you know loss of taste and smell is now a medical condition called long COVID? That you can now be prescribed tons of medications for that will not work? Did you know that tinnitus or ringing in your ears is now a long COVID diagnosis? Did you know brain fog is now a long COVID diagnosis? That they have published in that document all the symptoms I'm about to tell you. They state you could experience lingering effects of and worsening for the next 10 years from now, called long COVID. Did you know that schizophrenia is now a long COVID diagnosis?
What?
And it's on the list. Did you know Parkinson's is now a long COVID side effect? Did you know Alzheimer's is on that list? Did you know psychosis with a disappearing pituitary gland is now a mental health illness diagnosed as long COVID? Did you know insomnia is now a long COVID diagnosis? Can't sleep through the night? That's now blamed on long COVID, and now we can bill your insurance for it. Did you know diabetes, type 1 and type 2 are now long COVID diagnoses? How many of you knew or know anyone who now has diabetes since 2020 after having COVID, but didn't before that? or now has diabetes since getting the COVID-19 vaccines. Did you know that's a massive issue being diagnosed all around the world since the COVID shots were introduced? Did you know that now brain cancers are long COVID diagnosable conditions? Myocarditis, high blood pressure, now long COVID. Did you know that? Okay. If any of you, let's just see, let's have you raise your hands. How many of you have heard that anybody since having COVID or since getting the vaccines, how many of you have heard, or you yourselves, have now been diagnosed with some turbo-aggressive cancer? Have you heard of these scenarios? Do you know anybody with these conditions? Has it affected you at all? How many of you have ever heard, or yourselves have heard, individuals are now suffering from blood clotting disorders they never had before 2020 or getting the COVID-19 vaccines? You heard of this as an issue? That's now a long COVID diagnosable condition, by the way, that we can prescribe Eliquis and other blood thinners for the rest of your life. That won't work, by the way. There's only two things they found in nature actually dissolves these blood clots that are created by what they call spike proteins of COVID. And those things are licorice root and NAC, N-acetylcysteine. And because our government knew that NAC would prevent all the blood clots that were going to come from COVID and the COVID-19 vaccines, the FDA decided on your behalf, because they love you so much, they decided to ban all sales of NAC by supplement companies that have been allowed to manufacture it and sell it in health food stores around the world for the last 75 years. All of a sudden, in May of 2020, the FDA says we're not allowing that to be sold on shelves to the American people anymore. You have to get it by prescription only. Just 5 months before the COVID-19 vaccines came out. And what have you heard is the term, the endearing term now they have for the COVID-19 vaccines? They call them the clot shots. Have you heard this term? Thank you, FDA, for trying to take away the one cure published since 2006 for these specific blood clots created by what you're going to learn in the book. So anybody suffering with those conditions, how about myocarditis? Have you heard of this term? How many of you ever heard or read the word myocarditis before 2020? How many of you know that myocarditis, the word, which means inflammation of heart muscle, how many of you know that that term was ever first written, ever, in history, in the 1880s by a researcher named Albert Calmet, who was paid by the Louis Pasteur Institute in Paris, France, to create the first ever cure for snakebite victims. He created antivenom, which is what all of you experience in hospitals in ER. If you get bit by a venomous creature, you're going to be given monoclonal antibodies. That's what antivenom is. Guess what else monoclonal antibodies cured? Acute COVID. Ironic, right? Did you know Albert Calmet, when he invented monoclonal antibodies in the 1880s, he said there is a horrific side effect that occurs within 5 days to 14 days after antivenom administration of monoclonal antibodies for snakebite victims. And he described the heart damage as myocarditis in 1886. The next time you ever heard it publicized was in 2021 when the COVID-19 vaccines get introduced. And imagine my shock to discover that inside every research study of the two people that just won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for creating the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines for Pfizer and Moderna, imagine my shock to find out that snake venom phosphodiesterase is named as the venom protein they use to damage your DNA doing gene therapy with mRNA injections. In every research study since 2009, and I highlight that for you in the book. And now you should understand why myocarditis is a side effect. You know how they make antivenom for snake bites? They inject a horse with venom and then collect its blood a few days later to collect the antibodies the body made against that venom. And in that solution is going to be some of the venom of the snake or the creature they injected into the horse. This is what creates the myocarditis. So it perfectly explains why did you see this. How many of you have heard about elevated D-dimers in relations to blood clots, this medical test? I remember calling 2 cardiologists within 24 hours of learning about this fact that many people getting the mRNA vaccines within days are having elevated D-dimers, and that test only reflects you are making blood clots in your body, and as your own body's defense mechanisms that God gave you, called plasmin, P-L-A-S-M-I-N, all of you have it, God gave it to you to make whenever your body detects there's a blood clot. And as plasmin dissolves the clot, the debris in the blood is called what they find on an elevated D-dimer test. Did you know if you go on, I actually called 2 cardiologists to find out that they know about this test, and both of them said they had to go look it up because they had never used it since seeing it named on a board exam in college. And these are 35 and 45-year cardiologists. So this is not a normal test. It is now, since the COVID vaccines came out. So I decided to go to medscape.com, which is a reputable online medical journal. And I wanted to know, what do lab technicians like LabCorp, Quest, if they took a blood sample and ran a D-dimer test, what is it they tell the medical professionals to go look for when that comes back elevated? Because I didn't know anything about it as a retired chiropractor. I had to go look it up. I don't know about y'all, if y'all have a question, don't you go look it up? I had to go look it up. I didn't know. On Medscape.com, I show you in the book, Medscape.com gives you 5 reasons why a person would have elevated D-dimers or blood clots being torn down in the body. There's only 5. The first 4 are described as this. It's a deep vein thrombosis. A big blood clot in the leg might exist, so go do an ultrasound and go find the blood clot. The next one is, if you have a person on blood clot busting drugs like heparin and warfarin, which are designed to break down blood clots, and Coumadin, for example. If you're on any of those medications, medical doctor, and you have your patient on it, you might want to run a D-dimer test to make sure you're not thinning the blood too fast, because you can bleed to death if you do that and have a stroke. So they're trying to manage how quickly they're dissolving clots, so look at that. Those patients with mRNA vaccines who had elevated D-dimers, they weren't on those drugs, so that could not have been the cause. The first one was look for a deep vein blood clot, DVT they call it, deep vein thrombosis. So even if you see an elevated D-dimer, it doesn't tell you where the clot is, it says go look for clots. So the lab tells you go look for a DVT, go look for fingers and toes turning black. Deion Sanders lost his toes, had them amputated. This is a side effect of micro blood vessels that are clotting. And then you have to have those amputations. This is a side effect of blood clotting. So D-dimers, they tell you go look for little bitty blood vessel blood clots, but they don't tell you where they are. So they're just telling you go look for blood clots, it's somewhere. The third one is go look for pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs. So you just have to go looking for it. The 5th thing I was shocked by was the only thing that could actually explain why mRNA injected people were having elevated D-dimers from blood clots. The 5th thing on Medscape.com, everybody should be shocked, all the MDs were, it says snake venom poisoning. So I decided, that's interesting, I didn't know that. No medical doctors have mentioned it. I'm going to go see who created the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines that they're calling clot shots. So I just looked up who invented it. Imagine my shock that it wasn't a guy I'd been on stages with and done documentaries with named Robert Malone. It wasn't him. It's actually 2 people at the University of Pennsylvania named Drew Weissman and Cataline Carrico. They're the ones that just won the Nobel Prize in Medicine, by the way, for creating these clot shots. I decided I was going to go take their names, put it in PubMed.gov, where all the medical research is published by our government, and I wanted to know their names, punch it in their search engine, and I want to see, I'm going to type their names and this words, snake venom. Cataline Carrico and Drew Weissman and snake venom. Imagine my shock when every research study from 2009 with their names on it, that in every single study from 2009 till the mRNA shots came out, it reads, we are funded by the NIAID department of the NIH, which is Dr. Anthony Fauci's department. We are being funded by the NIAID department to do gene therapy vaccinations. So they're funded by Anthony Fauci since 2009. When you go up into the materials and methodology of their research study to develop these gene therapy shots, the words, we use snake venom phosphodiesterase to cleave the RNA of the mammal we're injecting our gene therapy shots into. Medscape.com says medical doctors go look for snake venom poisoning. All I did was go look for the snake venom. Is it somewhere in these shots? And is it in their research and their development? The reason for the blood clotting is because of snake venom phosphodiesterase that has been identified since 1956 to cause rapid blood clotting in all humans, and those blood clots are heparin, warfarin, and coumadin resistant. And if you look at all research studies being published since May of 2020, when COVID started, not even the vaccines being out, every hospitalized COVID-19 patient they reported, the majority of them had blood clotting that would not be resolved with heparin and warfarin. And oh my God, it finally made sense. Why was blood clots were being created? They're injecting you with a venom protein that creates blood clotting. And until the medical doctors knew what they were looking for, they would have never known to go look for snake venom phosphodiesterase, because there's 4 published all-natural cures to it to prevent all those blood clots that are being made. Do you know what they are? Do you want to know what they are? 4 of them. Vitamin C, N-acetylcysteine, NAC, that the FDA tried to take away from us, NAC, glutathione, which your liver makes, and it is completely abolished by something called EDTA, a heavy metal chelator. So there's 4 cures that all of them had an option for, and it was my duty to try to save as many of these people, unfortunately, who volunteered themselves for this massive worldwide experimental injection from dying from blood clots. But that was not the only side effect. All right, so long COVID, I just want y'all to know, has been summarized that people who just got COVID and are going to continue to have lasting side effects and symptoms, of over 200 of them, they just published in this document. They will not suffer. They just published this year, in 2024, sorry. They just said, these individuals who have any of these long COVID symptoms of 200 listed side effects will have their symptoms for a minimum 10 years from now. The reason why I wrote this book is because I'm not putting up with that crap. You don't have to suffer that long. Did y'all know that in the same time period, all of us were being locked up at home, that our United States government and the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, published 3 research studies. At the same time they're publishing all these COVID-19 studies about long haulers COVID, they decided to publish 3 research papers titled Long-Term Health Effects of Snake Venom in a Human. One of the 3 is titled Long-Term Mental Health Consequences of Venom After a Snake Bite in Humans. Did you know the same time period of suffering for long COVID symptoms for the next 10 years? Take 10 years from now, plus the 4 years ago when COVID started, that's 2020. They're telling you for 14 years now, people will suffer with these symptoms. Do you know how long it is published that anybody bit by a snake who is treated with antivenom, how long the venom will create symptoms in their body? 4, after the antivenom life-saving therapy has been applied.
10 years.
The venom will stay in their body and average 12.7 to 14 years, creating health issues, all listed in those 3 research papers. In one chapter in this book, I outlined the long-term health effects of COVID and all the 200 side effects and symptoms they list in medical conditions, now called long COVID, that all people around the world are going to suffer with for the next 10 years, they say. Then I took those same 3 research studies, long-term health effects, mental and physical, of snake venom in the human body after you've been treated for a snake bite. And did you know that not 75% of them overlap from one study to the other, long COVID snake venom? Not 75% overlap. It's 100% of them are named in both, and they're identical. So if you know anybody struggling with long COVID symptoms, if you know anybody who's been vaccine injured, I'm not sure if this would be a shock to you, what is to blame for all of the horrific injuries, turbo cancers, myocarditis, death, miscarriages after the COVID-19 vaccines, paralyzation, Guillain-Barré syndrome? What do they blame that you see in the media for all those injuries? What's the technology in the COVID-19 shots that they blame it on? That's 4 letters, mRNA. Okay, so these are called, Pfizer and Moderna particularly are called Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. Have you guys heard any doctors talking about this mRNA gene therapy damaging your DNA, creating all these horrific outcomes? They blame it always on mRNA in the shots. Did you know there is no mRNA in any of the COVID-19 shots? So what the hell are they talking about? There is no mRNA in any of the COVID-19 shots. That is not what is in there. In fact, our government this year, sorry, I say this year, we just switched to 2025. In 2024, the United States government on the NIH's website decided to publish 2 documents: how we made the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines and what is in the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. And I highlight those documents for you in the book. You know, they tell you there is no SARS-CoV-2 virus at all, no part of it, no piece of it inside the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. Then I'd like to ask you, the title of the chapter in the book is Imagine an antiviral vaccine that has no virus in it. They told you needed this shot in order to prevent you from getting a virus. Well, how was your body going to make any antibodies to defend itself against a virus if you didn't put any parts of the virus in there for it to identify? Okay, so if they didn't put any virus in there, not a joke, on those documents, it actually says this. We put no part of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in it. This is why we can confidently tell you, you cannot get COVID from our shots. They blamed COVID on the virus. There was no virus in the shots. So then my next question is for you. Everybody who fell for or volunteered themselves for the vaccine for COVID, for whatever reason, what were they vaccinating you against if it wasn't the virus they were telling you was a threat? All I read was a bat coughed in China and made the whole world sick. And he coughed a virus. But why didn't they vaccinate you with any part of that virus to prevent it? I'll let y'all fill in the gaps there. Let me know what you come up with. All of it's just deceitful to me, so they must have been lying for some reason. All right, next statement. There is no mRNA in our COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. Did you know that? So then what is in there? They show you and they tell you, and I show you the illustration in the book. I actually take that document and screenshot it so you can read it, then I show you the reference. You go look it up yourself. And if they take it down, just go to Wayback Machine and type in that same reference and you'll find it. There's actually DNA plasmids inside the vaccines, and the reasons why they didn't call the shots COVID-19 DNA plasmid vaccines is because every medical doctor on earth, me, Dr. McCullough, Richard Urso, Pierre Corey, all of us, would have gone and looked into DNA plasmid research, which has been published for 75 years. They've been working on this technology. And the moment you would have looked up any studies on DNA plasmids, you would have known exactly why all the horrific VAERS injuries were being reported, Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. You would have known and been able to explain every one of those injuries. The term shedding, anybody heard of that? The worry about vaccinated people shedding their vaccinated technology onto you or being around them. This is a real thing, but no one could explain it to you because they were all looking at mRNA research and it didn't explain any of it. It was like a great mystery. It's because there wasn't any of it done. The only time it was ever done was on animals in the early 2000s, and 100% of those people died, or the animals died, which is why they were never given to humans. DNA plasmids have been developed for the last 75 years, and this is the first time they put them in shots and wanted to see how the whole world responded. The term shedding, I answer it in the book. Everybody who's interested in how does the vaccinated impact those who are unvaccinated and how do we defend them and how do we help them stay healthy, the answer is DNA plasmids have been developed for 75 years, and they use DNA plasmids. It is a circular hula hoop of DNA, and in the hula hoop is embedded a genetic code of the spike proteins of COVID. Those spike proteins of COVID wrapped up in this DNA, when you're injecting any mammal with DNA plasmids, all of us are made up of bacteria and fungi. And there are specific bacteria and fungi, that will take DNA plasmids, draw them inside their bodies, and they have something we don't have. Human beings have enveloped nucleuses inside their cells. So our DNA is actually wrapped inside of a little walled structure to protect it from outside toxicities and damage. But in bacteria and yeast or fungus, they have naked DNA. It's just floating around in the body. So anytime a genetic material gets absorbed through the outer membrane or wall of the bacteria's cell, It goes inside the cell of the bacteria and yeast. That DNA plasmid connects to their DNA, and now it programs that bacteria and yeast to manufacture a poison that is embedded, the instructions embedded inside the DNA plasmid. And as long as that bacteria is alive, it will spit out into your body's blood, lymphatic system, all of it. It will continue to spit out the poison it has now been programmed to manufacture. This is how shedding happens. So to answer your question, I know everybody's got questions about shedding typically. We're the only ones that put this together for you. They inject DNA plasmids into a vaccinated person, imagine whoever that individual is, you or other. And when they injected you inside of your bowels and inside your bloodstream, if you have yeast or E. coli bacteria in your body, both of them are their favored pathogens that draw in DNA plasmids and then are programmed for life to spit out a poison inside your body. It just so happens with the COVID-19 vaccines, it's not one poison, it's not two poisons, it's 36 different poisons synthetically manufactured all around the world in biological weapons labs in beds of bacteria and yeast. Now, is bacterium different forms of bacteria, and is yeast and fungi, are those spreadable to other people from you if you have it? Does bacteria spread to other people? Can fungi spread to other people? Can bacteria or yeast in a person who's been vaccinated, that now that bacteria in their body is now programmed and changed genetically to manufacture poisons, can that bacteria be transferred through saliva, through intercourse, through breast milk, and through sweat to other people? 100% of the time. Any females out there that have ever had or heard of vaginal candidiasis, candida, vaginal? This yeast infection is horrible. Can they spread that yeast to their sexual partner? Yeah, the man will develop a jock itch and a rash 100% of the time. So if the female, for example, got the vaccine, actually let's switch this around. We don't want to make it another Adam and Eve story, right? Let's not blame this on Eve. Let's say the male gets the vaccine. The wife's like, I ain't doing that crap. I've watched Dr. Ardis' show. I ain't doing that. After she gets done watching that, they go and make love. The husband takes his yeast that is now programmed and primed to manufacture spike proteins in his body, has sex with you. His semen and his sweat and his lubricant made by his body will secrete that yeast right inside of you. Then as you the next day wake up and eat your Pop-Tarts and your donuts, go to Starbucks and eat your latte wrapped up with sugar and cream, then you go and have your cake and donuts for dinner. You have red wine to cool down. All of that converts into sugar and feeds the yeast you now have in your body. And over the next few days and weeks, guess what symptoms you're going to develop? What does sugar do to bacteria and yeast? Does it feed it or kill it? It feeds it. Each bacteria and yeast cell is a single organism that self-replicates. So the DNA of each of those bacteria and yeast that now have DNA plasmids that have changed their genetics, they're now replicating all day long in the person's body more and more of themselves. And as they're producing more and more poison, guess how bad you're going to feel. And since the vaccines have been introduced, and those who are living with those who are vaccinated, many of them continue to have worsening symptoms. And now you know why. They have to do a stool sample test or blood analysis, and it's simple, I'll lay it out for you. And you want to do a stool sample test, it's the easiest, to identify any E. coli bacteria or candida or yeast inside your body that has been programmed by these plasmids. The moment you identify that they're there are simple, all-natural solutions to cure them, and then within 3 months, go back and do this, after treating yourself for 3 months, go back and do the stool sample test again. All the E. coli will be wiped out, all the candida will be wiped out, but you will have already noticed that within 2 weeks, all your symptoms have gotten better that you've been struggling with. That goes for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Was that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah, the shedding is they are spreading to you the bacteria and yeast that have been changed in the vaccinated person, and they are spreading it to you. And they could easily cough on their hand, touch a doorknob, you come around, touch the doorknob, you could lick your hand, or lick your mouth, or lick your hand later. That bacteria now is going to thrive in your mouth. I dare you to put sugar in there of any kind, even from fruit. It's going to feed it, and it's going to replicate. And as more and more of those spike proteins or those poisons are being released in your body, the sicker you're going to get, the worsening heart disease you're going to have, the worsening blood clots you're going to have, and the answers to all of these questions, long COVID symptoms and diseases, including diabetes, including these mental health issues called long COVID, they're all wrapped up and can be summarized to be identical. COVID and all of its injuries, including long COVID, are a result of what they called the outside spike proteins of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. But the DNA plasmid vaccines make your body in the billions of bacteria to produce the spike protein in your body. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And for the majority of you don't know it, unfortunately, maybe, but you're going to read this book and then hopefully share it with your medical professionals and those you love. The spike proteins of COVID were what caused all injuries to COVID and all symptoms of COVID. And 100% of all your symptoms of COVID, long COVID, vaccine injury, are 100% published snake venom side effects. And 4 countries, starting in January of 2020, took blood, urine, and feces samples of every sick person with COVID and who PCR tested for COVID, and they ran their blood into DNA testing, looking for what is making these individuals sick, no matter the symptom. And 100% of the DNA testing in 4 different countries, Japan, France, then Germany, and then Italy, they found not 1 or 2 spike proteins, they found 36 different animal venom proteins in all their blood, urine, and feces, and they found no animal venom proteins in those who PCR tested negative for COVID worldwide. COVID's symptoms worldwide were created by a combined 20 different snake venom proteins that are manufactured in labs all around the world, not just in Wuhan, primarily in the United States and Ukraine. They developed these synthetic venom proteins from all these creatures from around the world. They've all been identified and named. You'll see it in the book. Somebody showed me the chart in my book as they walked up for the signing and said, "Are you serious?" With all the 36 venoms. Yeah, I'm serious. The DNA confirms it. All of us are supposed to trust DNA evidence, and 4 countries already confirmed with DNA evidence what's making y'all sick and why it's lingering. It was 20 different snake venoms from around the world, these snakes. And then there was 1 random crown of thorns starfish venom in every COVID-19 positive patient. Imagine the irony, crown of thorns starfish. The whole agenda of COVID seemed very satanic. Imagine them picking the crown of thorns starfish only to be found by DNA evidence in everybody's blood, urine, and feces. Oh, and by the way, where do starfish live? They live on the ocean floor. I'd like to ask you, how is it that they found in Germany and Italy that every single person that was testing positive for COVID had starfish venom in their blood, urine, and feces? Can you explain that to me? Do you think starfish were on the ocean floor coughing through the water? It went to the surface, and then because of global warming, it evaporated into the air. Jet streams swept it all over the place, and we all inhaled it. Is that how it got there?
Yep.
The other 15 of the 36 venoms are cone snail venoms, which are all out in the ocean. Is the ocean that way?
Yeah.
Am I pointing the right way?
Yeah.
Most of them are California cone snails, by the way, in your ocean, on the floor. They're snails, about this big. And they produce the most deadly venom on earth to human beings. And they found 15 different cone snail venoms from the ocean floor in every single COVID-19 positive patient worldwide. Do cone snails cough? Have y'all ever seen that? Have any of you ever been coughed on by a snail in the ocean? And y'all been, I guess everybody who got COVID, worldwide, the 5 billion people who got the vaccines, they must have got sick. I guess all 5 billion of them must have went on a scuba diving tour to all get injected with a starfish all on that tour while they're underwater. And 15 cone snails stung all of you. All 5 billion of them. It's the only way, logically, those would have ended up in the body of those people all around the world. What most people don't know is I blew the lid on a venom industrial complex I didn't know existed. Mike Adams, the health ranger for 30 years, had no idea existed. We literally blew the lid off of this massive billion-dollar industry that most of you have no idea about. Have you guys seen chemtrails over California ever?
Yeah.
All the time.
Did you know that the United States Department of Justice published in 2012 a document called Conotoxins, cone snail venom in the ocean off your coast here. Conotoxins, potential weapons of the sea. And they describe in the summary, it's still on the United States Department's website, that in 2012 they said, we are concerned at the Homeland Security that there is so much man-made manufactured cone snail venoms called conotoxins that they will use it as an aerosol and spread it through the air to create these two symptoms in all humans: respiratory distress and death. 8 years later, in 2020, every single human with COVID has cone snail venom inside of them? Oh, our United States Department of Justice knew this was coming. Who's heard of the World Economic Forum? How many of you have seen that 3 years later, 2015, and the date of their article on their website right now is September 11th. I don't find that ironic. September 11th, 2015. The name of the article is How Killer Snails Will Help Us Improve the State of the World. And it's all about cone snail venoms being manufactured around the world as drugs and vaccines for humans. And did you know that there already is an FDA-approved drug made from cone snail venom that they use in hospitals all around the country intravenously for people who they can't get out of pain? And it's called Prialt. The generic name is called Ziconotide for conotoxins. You know it has a published side effect if you get cone snail venom inside the body of a human? It's published. If cone snail venom gets in the blood supply of a human, which every COVID-19 patient had it, they list this side effect of cone snail venom on the Prialt and Ziconotide insert form and packet. It states the individual will hold to false beliefs even in the presence of facts. And do you know how many people fell for this damn narrative, even when all of us MDs and chiropractors were trying to tell the world the truth and show you all the research? Other people were like, oh, it's cognitive dissonance. It's whatever it is. That's why they're falling for it. They're just naive. No. They literally are poisoning you with something that actually changes your belief systems and makes you hold to what they tell you first before the research and facts is even presented to you. And then you won't believe it anyway. So I've said to all the medical professionals who don't want to listen to or look at the DNA evidence conducted in 4 different countries around the world who refuse to look at it, I continue to say in my interviews, I guess they all have cone snail poisoning. They want to continue their false beliefs that a bat coughed in China and made the whole world sick, even when I present you with hundreds and hundreds of pages of facts. They've all got cone snail poisoning, don't worry. All right, I think it's been 30 minutes, y'all are all getting sunburned. Especially if you're Irish like me. All right, so the hope is in the book. I lay out medical tests that can be run to identify which of these synthetic venoms being produced around the world. There are 3 major industries where venoms have been manufactured since 1956 and put in drugs and vaccines. That's the number 1 industry. Number 2 is the insecticide industry. And then the 3rd is cosmetics. And in case you didn't know they're using venom in cosmetics, they actually say venom on the ingredient deck. How many of you know who Nicole Kidman is? She's the spokesperson of a new cosmetic brand. They have a shampoo and conditioner that's being bought every 22 seconds on the internet. I just read this in the New York Times. It's called Vegamour, Vegamour. So it's this new healthier supposed brand of shampoo and conditioner. And right in the ingredient list is wasp and spider venom. Right on the ingredients. Do you guys know why it is they're putting venom in all of our cosmetics, in our plants, in our crops as insecticides, and why it is they're putting in your drugs and vaccines? You're going to learn in the book that in 1956, the National Cancer Institute in America funded 2 scientists named Rita and Stanley to take snake venom phosphodiesterase that's inside the COVID-19 vaccines and put it on the skin, in the mouth, and inject it into mammals and tell us what happens. Any oncologists out here? Cancer doctors? If there is, there's a term called nerve growth factor and epidermal growth factor. Those terms never even existed, but you all know them now, and you quote them to your patients. Epidermal growth factor is cancer growing on the skin or any dermal tissue on the outside of your organs. Nerve growth factor is this invisible side effect to create cancer in neurological tissue, brain, spinal cord, nerves. Glioblastoma would be an example. Did you know that in 1956, they were given snake venom phosphodiesterase, said put it on mammals and birds and tell us what happens within 72 hours. They were able to confirm they could grow cancerous tumors within 72 hours on all tissues on and in the mammal or the bird. And they called the invisible side effect of venom to create cancer in the brain nerve growth factor for the first time ever. Any other tissues that grew cancerous tumors in 72 hours was called epidermal growth factor, EGF. Now they throw those terms around like it's nothing. They all came from snake venom research. Do you know that Dr. Stanley Cohen and his buddy Rita, paid for by the National Cancer Institute, whose mission statement is to find the cause and cure cancers? Isn't it shocking they were paying researchers to figure out how to create really quick, aggressive turbo cancers? And once they figured out snake venom would do it, 30 years later in 1986, we gave them the greatest award in medicine, the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Guess who invented DNA plasmid technology that's in the COVID-19 vaccines, where snake venom phosphodiesterase is highlighted in every research study? Dr. Stanley Cohen. Discovered snake venom causes turbo cancer in 1956, won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1986 for figuring it out, and over the last 75 years was developing DNA plasmids to make our bodies and the organisms that live inside of us make venom that causes and creates cancer in all of our tissues. Have you heard of turbo cancer since the COVID-19 vaccines came out? You want to know why it's so freaking crazy? All you gotta do is go look at the researchers who created it and the technology behind it. Did you know that during COVID-19 they figured out that glioblastomas can be reversed in 3 days with one nutrient called nicotine? I actually show you the doses they use. While we were locked down at home, our government was funding researchers to see if nicotine would dissolve brain tumors created by viruses within 72 hours. And it worked. 72 hours, 50% shrunk glioblastoma. It's in the book. You should be excited. Share it with your oncologist. Glioblastomas are the #1 diagnosed brain tumor in the world right now. And it's killing people faster than it ever has in ever in its existence. Kids in college are being diagnosed with headaches, then brain tumors called glioblastomas, and dying within 2 weeks to 2 months. University of Georgia kid just did, 21 years old, the girl, couldn't believe it after getting the vaccine. All right, so a lot of the answers are in the book. This is going to help resolve a lot of the concerns and issues that people have wondered about their health for years. Because, for example, one of the lessons out of this is this. A lot of MDs had a big problem with this when I introduced the venom aspect of COVID, and 3 years ago, there was a lot of hate published about me, not to listen to me. And that's okay, I'm just reading you the DNA evidence. Okay, I guess we just pick and choose when we want to trust DNA evidence. But anyway, there it is, they did the work. Let me just show you what it is so it gives you hope, because once you know the answer and the solutions to go looking for it, which is amazing. All right, so did you guys know, because most medical doctors did not know, I actually heard this over and over and over, you can't swallow snake venom and get it past your stomach acid. Your stomach acid will destroy it and neutralize it. That's not true. In fact, I look at them and go, wait, do you believe that? All the MDs, and I mean, I was doing Zoom calls with thousands of them around the world 3 years ago. Do you really believe that? Yes. So your Watch the Water documentary is a farce. I go, oh really? How long have you been a medical doctor? How long? Great. How many of you have ever prescribed ACE inhibitor drugs to your patients? Like lisinopril, captopril, enalapril, ACE inhibitor drugs for high blood pressure. Have you heard of this term? Did you know that ACE inhibitors were invented and released in 1981? And that this morning, 22 million Americans woke up swallowing it first thing before they even went to the bathroom? How many of you knew, because none of the medical doctors knew that I've addressed in the last 3 years, and none of them knew it until I showed them. How many of you know that lisinopril, captopril, and enalapril are dry tablets of snake venom from a viper in Brazil called the Jaracus viper? And how many of you knew that that snake venom, when you ingest it, called captopril, lisinopril, or enalapril, you 22 million Americans, how many of you know that snake venom ingested in the human since 1956 has been known to rapidly create every cancer known to man? So any of you who were ever diagnosed and blamed that your high blood pressure was on your genetics and they put you on ACE inhibitors, your loved ones, later on, I guarantee you died from the effects of being treated for cancer. And they never put the two together and blamed both of them on genetics and had no idea they were prescribing snake venom to you. That since 1956, the National Cancer Institute of America knew you would develop every form of cancer in your body wherever that venom lodged itself in any of your tissues. This is how disgusting that industry is. And as it reads in Revelations 18:23, in the last days all nations of the earth will be deceived by pharmakia.
Witchcraft.
And that is the Greek original text of the Bible reads the word pharmakia, which literally translates to sorcery and witchcraft. And you're seeing it right now. Our entire world is being governed, suppressed, oppressed by the pharmaceutical industry worldwide. In fact, please don't forget all of your constitutional rights that the Founding Fathers gave you in that document, all of them, that you have enjoyed here in this country, that we brag about makes America greater than every other country, and everybody wants to either sneak in here or get in here legally. The pride we share about this country was established based on that document. And they list in there that these are inalienable rights given to us by God that we are here to preserve. Do you know there's only been one time in America's history since 1776 where all of your constitutional rights were taken from you? In 2020, during COVID. You couldn't be with your family without getting a vaccine. You couldn't travel without a vaccine. You couldn't actually go to work without a vaccine. You couldn't keep your license without a vaccine. You couldn't go to church without a vaccine. You couldn't worship, sing hymns without their vaccine. All of your rights and freedoms, even to travel, you had to show proof that you took our drug. Big Pharma is who orchestrated the whole damn thing, and until we hold them accountable, and no one is addressing this. All of your rights were stolen from you by the pharmaceutical industry. They convinced and bribed and blackmailed all of your politicians, your federal health agencies, all of your media they control to convince you you have no freedoms unless you take our device, our medicine. Big pharmas who stole it all from you, and no one wants to address that because they're all scared to death of this industry. Well, they stole someone from me. Screw them. I will continue to actually expose their damn plans to create disease, illness, and death from the time you're born till you die, until they decide and God decides my mission is over. It is not over, it's just begun. But out of tragedy was birthed this ability and opportunity to educate as many people as possible on the incredible design that you're sitting in called the human body that God created. And He did not screw up. But from the time you're born on this earth in America, you're told that that newborn, which is a miracle designed by God, is fallible, and God forgot an immune system, and within 12 hours of being born on this earth, you need their damn medicine called the hepatitis B vaccine, which, by the way, how many newborns do you know have sex with other newborns and share drug needles to get hepatitis B? It's the only way you get it. Have any of you ever walked by a nursery in the hospital and watched newborns having sex with each other, multiple partners at once? Then what the hell are you so scared of? Hepatitis B only is contracted by having sex with multiple partners, unprotected, and sharing drug needles with each other. It only has a protective lifespan of 12 years. Can y'all name any 12-year-olds that do that? Have multiple sex partners and are doing drugs illegally? Then why the hell are you vaccinating them within 12 hours of birth?
Amen.
Big Pharma's convinced America to have more faith in their science than in God's creation. And oh my God, the Protestants have been falling for it for decades. I've raised 5 children, no vaccines, all through public school universities, 4 of them are adults now. I knew the fraud that was there because I studied the vaccines before I became a parent. I wanted to know. I don't know anything about being a parent. They want to inject my kids, what's in that stuff and how good is it? Does it work? Well, I learned real quick, never has there been any long-term studies finding efficacy and safety in vaccines, ever. So I decided to not do it and found ways around it forevermore. And now I get the opportunity 20 years later to educate all of you how we did it and why it is you should do it too. So it is my honor to be here. Thank you for being here. Let's open up for Q&A. May this book bless your life. My recommendation to everybody is, once you get through it, if you only got one, the medical doctors were not privy to this information that's in that book, but it's all researched, all backed, all the references are there, and they have no idea there's medical tests they can order at LabCorp, Quest, or through their offices to answer why it is you're continuing to be sick with long COVID or vaccine injury, and all the cures, prescriptions I named in there for you. So if you get a copy, you find it beneficial for you might want to give one to your favorite healthcare provider or medical doctor and give them a free copy. Because at some point they're going to get frustrated that what they're doing ain't working. All right, let's open it up. All right. I see hands. Maybe you're blocking the sun. I don't know.
I have 2 questions, and I think you can answer them. What % of oncologists would take chemo?
The same amount of back surgeons who get back surgery. They always ended up in my office.
9%.
9% of oncologists will get chemotherapy and radiation.
Who said this? Vaccines are a wonderful way to cull the population.
Oh, where did he say that, by the way? It wasn't like it was hidden on a website somewhere. It was from the stage of a TED Talk. In 2010, by the way, if you want to look at it.
It's intentional murder.
Yeah. So what y'all don't know, you might be wondering, how many people experience miscarriages with the COVID-19 vaccines or heard of people doing that, right? There's an infertility agenda at play and a depopulation agenda. There's a goal actually written in 1960s that the Earth cannot survive with its own resources to sustain a population more than 1 billion people on the Earth by the year 2050.
Yeah, so crowded.
So this is the agenda, and Bill Gates talked about it, that this can be successfully done with vaccines. Yes. Yes, Dawn.
Yeah, so you talked about the vaccines, but what if you had COVID and you weren't injected? It was like before the vaccines came out. What do you think is COVID then?
So COVID, our question is if you didn't get the vaccines, but you got COVID maybe, or during the
before the
COVID period,
vaccines.
before the vaccines, yeah. Long COVID is only a term for those who got COVID without vaccine. So long COVID and COVID are the identical thing. COVID is a list of symptoms created by 36 different venoms that we inhaled, ingested into our body.
Just from the chemtrails or?
Air, water, food. Yes.
Right.
And I show you all of the named venom proteins that make up only COVID-infected people around the world. And they only found those 36 different venoms in the COVID-positive group. When they tested people that were testing negative for COVID, they didn't find any of those 36 venoms in any of them. And all those venoms cause loss of taste and smell, ringing in the ears, brain fog for long, long periods of time, which is why we experience it. Yes?
What about migraines? Like I was 15-year-old, just started having migraines, or non-vax, no vax.
So no vaccines, migraines now.
No vaccine, but she gets migraines.
Yeah. There's actually a chapter in the book called Just in the Nicotine of Time. They took, in 2023, January, a researcher named Mark Lemke. I'll show you the entire study. I was actually contacted by a 36-year Navy admiral who does special missions for our government's military. He contacted me about this study via a phone call. 6 unknown caller ID things come on my phone. I keep deleting them, and sending them to voicemail. And the next text is, answer your damn phone, unknown caller ID. And I was like, delete? Calls again, I'm like, oh my God, I answered. And this guy says that Washington, D.C. is trying to bury this paper, you need to see it. And that's what that chapter, Just in the Nicotine of Time, is. Our United States government tried to hide this study. January 2023, Mark Lemke, the researcher, took people who suffered with long COVID symptoms that included migraines. It's in the list. Took all these long COVID suffering patients with all their symptoms, and they had to have tried medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, zinc, and other things, and physical therapy to restore their symptoms back to normal. And if none of those worked, those were the only people they took into the trial. And they only asked them to do one thing and one thing only, and explained in the study, we're going to do this because of the research done in China and France, where DNA evidence proved it was snake venoms that were the spike proteins of COVID. They called them spike proteins. Spike was a name to cover the word snake. It's snake proteins. They called it spike proteins, so it doesn't seem so obvious. These are snake proteins manufactured all around the world and put in cosmetics, drugs, vaccines. In this study, they said because of the research done in France and China, and they referenced their findings and conclusions that the spike proteins of COVID are identical to snake venom proteins, these snake venom proteins target nicotine receptors that create migraines and all of the long COVID symptoms. So they asked these people who tried everything else to cure themselves and it didn't work. They asked them to do one thing and one thing only, and I show you all the highlights in that chapter. They asked them to wear a 7 milligram nicotine patch for 6 days only. Within 3 days, 50% of all long COVID symptoms that were debilitating for 2 years disappeared. At day 6, they stopped the patches, and 100% of all of their symptoms are completely eradicated by day 23. 100% of all long COVID symptoms in research studies are completely cured by nicotine. And you'll learn in the book why smokers were the least ever to get hospitalized and diagnosed with COVID ever. It's because nicotine was in their body to protect them.
Now they're trying to outlaw cigarettes.
Absolutely. So, okay, so go ahead.
Is there a particular product you recommend when it comes to the nicotine patches?
Mhm. We've actually researched all the ones that are commercially available now. Nicotine gum, mints, pouches, patches. And there are, in the book, I named for you which brands are the cleanest as far as used adhesives, chemicals that are in them. Rugby brand is the cleanest form of patches. That's what I'm wearing right now, until I make my own. And then, and I've been for 3 years. Rugby brand is the cleanest form of patches. They also do make gum, but Lucy brand gum and Suckets is the healthiest form of those forms of nicotine products. 3 years ago, I released a documentary called Watch the Water. Did y'all see it?
Yes.
At the very end of that documentary, I listed the antidote to all things COVID is nicotine. I was the first person publicly to tell you this. Within 1 month, America, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, during the pandemic of COVID, they all gathered together and in 1 week produced new national health agendas they publicized in the media to all their citizens. We have a new national health agenda we need to announce in the middle of this pandemic. We are going to make sure by the year 2030, every country said the same thing, in the same week. We are going to ban all nicotine products commercially and tobacco products from all of our countries by the year 2030. And if you don't pay attention, damn it, you're going to learn in the book, nicotine stands in the way of all viral pandemics. Ebola, Marburg, bird flu, Rift Valley, West Nile, influenza, common cold viruses, all coronaviruses are cured with nicotine. They have to abolish access commercially for you for nicotine and tobacco products because it stands in the way of their depopulation and infertility agenda using vaccines. The majority of all vaccines are published to cure viral diseases. That is their primary reason why they make them. And they're using this claim that vaccines are safe and effective and will prevent all outbreaks of diseases by viruses for your betterment. No, it's not. Did you guys know, you'll learn, you'll see it in the book, I actually include it. Do you know what the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry loves Latin? That's their favorite language, so they look smarter than you. It's the only reason why they use it. You know what the word in Latin virus, what its actual definition is, even in your lifetime, in every Latin English dictionary? It only has one definition. The word virus, historically, forever, even in your lifetime, published in every Latin English dictionary, of which I just bought 20 books, going back to 1770 to now, Latin English dictionaries. They all say the same thing. The definition of the word virus in Latin, which is Big Pharma's favorite language. In English, it means forever poison, comma, especially of snake's venom. And nicotine is the cure for all snake venom. This is why they want to make sure you don't get access to it. You guys remember the emergency use authorization for remdesivir and the COVID-19 vaccines? That's the only reason they got access to these drugs never approved by the FDA before. All they had to do was convince the government this is an emergency that we've never seen before. Therefore, we can put in an EUA and get any drug on the market that's never been proven safe and effective as a solution. An EUA can only be granted in an emergency if there is no published cure already. So they've got to make sure you don't know this information so that you continue to buy the virus narrative that y'all are spreading it to each other. The next one is January 21st. The government and its actors, like Dr. Peter Hotez just announced this month, that January 21st is the next pandemic to start in America. Did you hear that? January 21st. He actually said it with his mouth on air. When Donald Trump takes office, bird flu is going to come out. January 21st. Okay, so I'd like to ask you, how does he know that all the birds in America are going to cough on January 21st? On America? It's called the bird flu for a reason. It's supposed to cough on you, so you get it. There's only 3 ways you get the bird flu, by the way. You have to inhale the blood of an infected bird into your lungs, you have to inhale the feathers of the infected bird into your lungs, or you have to inhale into your lungs the bird's poop. And science has published that since 2008. How many of you have ever inhaled the blood, feathers, or poop of a bird into your lungs? Don't fall for the crap they're about to lay out for you. All right, now I was told, I need to address something real quick. How many of you have heard of GLP-1 drugs?
Yeah.
Ozempic, Wegovy, Majorna, Trulicity is one of them. Any of these? Do you guys know what GLP-1 drugs are? They're all made from one thing.
Gila monster.
It's venom from a lizard in the deserts of the southwest United States called the Gila monster lizard. Gila monster lizard. GLP-1 drugs are made from the venom protein of the Gila monster lizard's venom, and the venom protein isolated from its venom that they are now replicating in labs around the world and calling it Ozempic, calling it Wegovy, calling it Majorna, calling it Zepbound, calling it Trulicity for heart disease, diabetes, and weight loss. You are injecting Exendin-4, which is a venom protein found in the Gila monster's venom. And I would like to ask you, how many of you know people who are overweight, can't manage their blood sugar, and have heart disease because they are Gila monster venom deficient? Why are y'all laughing? There's millions of people in America that are convinced they don't have enough Gila monster venom inside of them and God forgot it. So we need to inject it once a week. And just so you know, this Gila monster venom has been researched since 1956, and I have the medical textbook called Venoms, where they started that research in 1956. It's taken them 70 years to get this Exendin-4 synthetically manufactured enough and packaged into little self-volunteered injections. Do you know that Gila monster venom's side effect, number 1, is published by the FDA? Ozempic and Wegovy, look it up. The generic name is called semaglutide of this Exendin-4 venom protein. Number 1 black box warning is within 12 to 36 months of this lifetime prescription, you know, people that are given a cholesterol and high blood pressure prescription, it's for life. So is Ozempic and Wegovy and all these other GLP-1 drugs. It's for life, once a week. Within 12 to 36 months, there is a black box warning. If you use it for 12 months to 36 months, you absolutely, every single person, increase their risk to develop every form of medullary thyroid cancer. That's the black box warning from the FDA. They know that's going to happen. 20% of all people who inject that for 12 months, it is published, will develop diabetic retinopathy and go blind. Their retina will detach from their eyeball, even if they don't have diabetes. It also causes gastroparesis, which is a paralyzed stomach leading to vomiting of everything you consume, water, every food. You will vomit cyclically every day, multiple times a day, for the next 2 to 3 years on average after stopping the drug. That venom binds to the vagal nerve and doesn't let the stomach empty into the intestines. So when you wake up and eat your breakfast, you swallow it, it goes into your stomach, and come lunchtime, it's still sitting there. Because the vagal nerve's been paralyzed and it won't open the bottom little door to let the food go into your intestines to be absorbed and broken down. So the food just sits there in your stomach. You don't feel hungry, right? So your coworkers ask you to go to lunch. You're like, well, I'm not hungry, but I'm supposed to be hungry, so I'm gonna go. And when you swallow the first bite of food, it lands on all the other food sitting in your stomach. And guess what your body does when it don't fit? It's coming back up. And that venom, I've already told you, venom is known to stay in the body for 10 to 14 years. Ozempic and Wegovy have only been in America for 5 years, but there are already people for 2, 3, and 4 years still can't stop vomiting after taking Wegovy and Ozempic and coming off of it. The same principles apply. Foreign protein cleanse, which is a product you'll learn about, there's a whole chapter on it. Nicotine, EDTA, these are the things that will help destroy those venom proteins also, but you've got to get off the venom-laced pharmaceutical drugs because they are absolutely published to cause cancer. Every oncologist in the world who sees a patient who since starting Ozempic and Wegovy and are now diagnosed with cancer, report to me after learning about my research on the fact that this is Gila monster venom injections. All of them have called me and said, Dr. Ardis, it's not medullary thyroid cancer. That's the #1 side effect. 100% of the people that come to us using Ozempic and Wegovy, males and females, all have metastatic breast cancers within 1 to 3 years of starting. So please, for the love of God, stop trusting this industry. They're there to poison you and create disease outcomes they can profit from in the future, unfortunately. All right, let's answer some more questions. Does that answer the GLP-1 thing? Oh, by the way, did you know there's no GLP-1 in any of those drugs?
Oh my gosh.
There is no GLP-1 in any of the GLP-1 drugs. There's no mRNA in any of the mRNA vaccines.
I just have a little question based on what you just shared. My mother, she was a massage therapist and also did some kinesiology, but she had things where, you can open and close the lymphatic system and drain it, like I was able to have nerve pain go away because the lymph system was drained. My niece, she had something where she had diarrhea, but my mom was able to do this thing across the body, which opened the flap or closed it so the diarrhea would stop. And it was just something soft like that. So could patients or that have been affected by this thing where they're vomiting learn how to do whatever this lymphatic thing is to change the valve?
Absolutely.
Would that help?
Yes, she's asking, can lymphatic massage or lymphatic treatments help with moving the bowels, moving the food?
Closing or opening the valve?
Closing or opening of valves of the digestive tract. Yes, it absolutely can do that. But the truth is, it doesn't move the venom off the receptors of all the muscles of your intestines, so you've got to take something prophylactically to actually remove them. Nicotine releases the venom.
Yeah, okay. So the nicotine.
Vitamin C, NAC, EDTA, these are all published cures of those venoms. All right, next.
Thank you. Is it possible, can you talk a little bit about the J&J? I know they pulled it from the market. I heard that was not mRNA. I don't know if that's true.
It's true.
So
She's asking about Johnson & Johnson's shot. So there was 3 primary shots in America, 2 supposedly mRNA shots, Pfizer and Moderna. And then Johnson & Johnson was not an mRNA vaccine. It was called a subunit protein vaccine. Subunit protein vaccine, subunit protein is actually just another term for spike protein vaccine.
Okay.
So the snake venoms, cone snail venoms, and the starfish venom that they called spike proteins, identified through DNA research, is what they injected directly into people who got the Johnson & Johnson shots. So instead of either inhaling small particles of these venoms or ingesting them, they're injecting billions of them into your body for those that were vaccinated with J&J. But by the way, Johnson & Johnson was not worse at causing blood clots than Pfizer and Moderna. Fauci just called out Johnson & Johnson because of all of the blood clotting effects of that drug, but Moderna and Pfizer at the same time had 2 and 3 times as many blood clots already reported from those shots. Why did they only pick on Johnson & Johnson? You can watch my Newsmax interviews, I told them all. Because Anthony Fauci had royalties to the Moderna shot, and the Moderna technology and Pfizer were the exact same. So if he called out Moderna or Pfizer, who had worse blood clotting effects, everyone would go, hold up, I thought Moderna and Pfizer were identical. And then his royalties and his